I do believe it was Jeannie who said that I can't make anybody fall in love, right? Well, if you ever wondered why that is, this film is the answer. Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today I'm coming to you all with yet another review, this time for Obsession, directed by Curry Barker and starring Michael Johnston, Inde Navarrette, Cooper Tomlinson, and Megan Lawless. Story-wise, the film is centered around Bear, a music store employee whose desired wish to date his childhood friend Nikki soon spirals into an unimaginable nightmare. Alright, of course, I'm going to start with the pros. Now, let me just say off the rip, I love this concept. If I were to take it back to my early days, in the Midwest, in Chi-Town, of course, I definitely recall my sister Raquel having the book Be Careful What You Wish For. And I remember seeing the cover and being so interested in it and just so intrigued by it. And as a longtime lover, still to this day, of Goosebumps, I can definitely say her owning it and having that book was my first that is the book that got me into it. And of course, naturally, that book deals with the consequences of wishes and how they can go awry, and how the title obviously is saying to really be careful what you wish for, because there's so much that goes into not just wishes but also our own idea of what we want, and even the specifics and the nuances of that. What we think we're wishing for, but what we actually aren't aware that we're wishing for. Like, there are all these little nuances to that kind of situation. I've always found that to be interesting. Even when it comes to movies, I've always been into that concept. Of course, Aladdin, as I mentioned before, but also Wishmaster, Mr. Destiny, Wish Upon a Star, and Bedazzled, just to name a few. I know there are others, but those are some of my earlier experiences with it. And as I said earlier, to reference Aladdin and Genie specifically, rest in peace to the late and great Robin Williams, who will always be appreciated. One of his central rules is that he can't make someone fall in love. And of course, as a kid, you just kind of think like, oh, okay, sure. Like, that's the rule and that's fine. You don't necessarily think about the details of it. But of course, as an adult, well, yeah, as an adult, it makes perfect sense, because what are you actually wishing for? What are you asking for? It's basically something that this person, whoever you're wishing this upon, this is something that this person cannot consent to, and something that is basically overriding their own thought process, emotions, and feelings, like their own natural being and way of approaching life. And that is horrifying in and of itself. And from that standpoint, the way that this film kind of explores that concept, very much like, okay, what if a genie or some variation of one, something that had to do with wishes, what if someone just wished for something that they really, really shouldn't, which we've seen variations of, but specifically honed in on the romance piece. And man, I have to say, like, I don't know in my mind what I could have envisioned that looking like, but I wasn't really prepared for the experience I had. I, of course, had the chance to see this at TIFF. And I have to say, out of all the films I saw there, which was probably well over 15, this was easily one of my favorites that I saw. And as a result, of course, it's going to be one of my favorites of this year, even though I've seen it prior to 2026. But yes, I really, really thought that the nature, the lens in which the film explores that, especially in relation to horror, was very compelling. And I think there was something so terrifying about it, because it's more than just the effect that the wish has and the consequences of it, but also like the awareness that this person has been potentially permanently altered from this, and they can't even, is the person even still there? And given that, like I said, all those things about consent, about how it would theoretically override all these things, then what's left? And the way that the film explores that just got under my skin, because it wasn't really just jump scares so much, but it was like atmosphere. And I find that for me, atmosphere is a big thing for me. Mulholland Drive specifically is one of my all-time favorite films. I think it's a masterpiece, but it is also one of the scariest films I think that I have ever watched and maybe will ever watch, because something about David Lynch's direction and his handling of that film is so deeply unsettling. Like Mulholland Drive, I genuinely don't think I could watch like late at night by myself, in the dark. It just has a way of getting underneath my skin and also making me feel unsettled and as if I am unsafe. And I find that as someone who obviously values peace and, comfort and feeling safe, so to speak, security, whatever it is, the idea that at any moment something horrible could happen or that something dark and horrifying is just, outside my door, that idea is so terrifying to me. And it's not always a tangible thing, but it's just the feeling. And I felt like this film, much like Mulholland Drive, even though it's not quite, it didn't hit me quite on that level, but it got close in a lot of moments. I thought the film did such a great job, and I thought Curry Barker, as a director, did a great job just creating that sense of unease and probably just a deeper sense of existential horror, along with what we might see as more typical horror. As someone who is fully satisfied in the space of singleness and is really not interested at all in a relationship or marriage, part of what worries me about romance is what it does to people. How it changes people, how it changes their relationships with other people outside of their relationship, and how it can change their belief system as well. Suddenly the things that they might not have been okay with, suddenly it's fine because they're with a certain person. Yikes. I mean, the things they'll allow become desensitized to, what they'll settle for, what they'll take for granted. The list goes on. And as someone who has seen people I was good friends with change themselves, or at the very least, change their relationship with me based on that, I don't have the best feelings about it. I understand every aspect of romance and love is not inherently negative. And I know that as someone who grew up seeing healthy marriages, healthy relationships all throughout my family and represented in so many beautiful ways. But also, as an adult, I see other aspects of it that I can't connect to. I'll also have to say that the performances are really effective, but let me tell you, if there is a showstopper, if there is one performance that that really just makes this entire film, it's Inde Navarrette. When I tell you, she played it perfectly. And although I understand that we have gotten accustomed to the Oscars ignoring many a horror performance, up until recently, shout out to Amy Madigan for her Oscar win for Weapons, and Michael B. Jordan and his Oscar win for Sinners. So we definitely have made some progress. Maybe it's a long shot, but as soon as I saw her in this, I was just like, we need something. Like, I need some nominations. Golden Globes. Look, I don't care if it goes all the way to the Oscars or not, but there needs to be some awards consideration, a Saturn Award, like something. She was easily the best part of the film. And I don't know if I've been quite this unsettled watching a performance horror-wise in a while. All right, now I'm going to jump over to the cons. And what I can say is that I don't have very many cons given my general enjoyment of this film. But I will say that we could have gotten more from the supporting characters and maybe had a bit more of a, if not emotional, just more of a narrative connection to those characters. Because they were present, they were there, but I also think we could have gotten more from them. I think the most compelling character was Sarah, and I think that I would have liked to have seen more of that. And I think given everything I said, of course, given how analytical I am, it would have been interesting finding a way to still delve a little bit deeper into the psychological ramifications of everything this wish has caused. Finding some way to also dig into Bear's mindset about Nikki, or more of his, because of course, we see the physicality and we see some of the conversations, but also I think there was also some subtext to dig into there that I think would have also added to the horror that was already playing out viscerally and visually. So I'm going to give Obsession an A-. Like I said, this was easily my favorite film out of the multitude of films I saw at TIFF, and I am not surprised, of course. I wouldn't have. I already knew when I saw it, but of course now that it's being released, I definitely think that people are going to be very surprised by this one, and I'm really excited to see the overall reception to it. I'm definitely excited to go revisit it and see it with some of my friends, because I can only imagine what the reaction is going to be. But yeah, outside of that, I have to say that, Curry Barker, he has a film prior to this called Milk and Cereal, which was his directorial debut that I'm interested in checking out. And then, of course, he has a film coming possibly next year, but his next film is going to be called Anything But Ghosts. And listen, I'm always here for new voices in general. And I love the fact that we're getting a new voice once again in horror, but also, and I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but also, up and coming actors, and actresses. Like, I'm not familiar with anyone in this film, so I like to see that. I don't want just star power. Star power can be nice, but sometimes to just ground ourselves in a new story in a new cinematic world, let's get some new faces. And so I don't have to necessarily be thinking about looking past this person and their persona to see this character. No, these are just new characters, new people, new horror, new storytelling, and I'm always here for that. Obsession is now playing in theaters. You guys are free to check it out. Leave your thoughts below and let me know what you think. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.